On the episode today, we have Brad Chandler. Brad, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It is very much my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. Back in ninth grade, I read a book on how to buy real estate with no money down. And in 2003, I started a real estate investment company that has flipped over 4,500 houses in that last 22 years. And about 3.5 years ago, trying to get my son help for anxiety, I was told by a performance coach that I had a tick when I talked about my childhood. And she asked that I want to come out and work with her because my issues from childhood could be affecting my son's anxiety. I'm like, me? No chance. I'm a single dad. I do everything for my kids. There's no way that's the case. But okay, I'll come work with you. And her ex-husband was an ex-Navy SEAL. And Thomas, in that weekend out in Park City, Utah, actually a 3-hour session in an Airbnb bedroom, my life forever changed. And we did address some things that I didn't know were weighing me down from childhood. And I got back and I looked around and things were so different that I was like, gosh, I've got to give this gift back to other people. And when I look at everyone suffering and struggling, it's always the same reason. And if I could help myself, I think I can help other people. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years is helping other people get rid of these hidden limiting beliefs that are keeping them from a life of abundance financially, relationships, health, whatever it is.
Great introduction. I do have about four or five follow-up questions, so I have to try and remember them all. But the biggest one that stands out for me is the fact that you had some, what should we say, unconscious stuff going on, and you may manage to help yourself in that way. So, how did you do it, and how can others also?
Yeah, so I needed assistance. You can do this alone. It's difficult, but not impossible. We simply went back to my childhood, and this gentleman asked me, I want you to list, and we're going to go over the times in your childhood where you felt stress, trauma, or you lost control. And we went through those experiences and we realized what the meaning was that I placed on those experiences. What happens as a child, our brain is literally being programmed from the age of birth till about 7, 8 years old. It is just downloading everything. So when something bad is happening, our parents are fighting, dad's not around, dad hits me with a belt, dad makes fun of me, mom and dad are fighting about money. The kid looks at the leaders as the parents and says, well, it can't be their fault because if it's their fault, I'm really in trouble. So the kid almost always takes the blame for themselves. They're the ones who say, this is my fault. Dad's spanking me and making fun of me because there must be something wrong with me. And that was my story. For 47 years, I lived with the story of I'm not enough. I didn't wake up every day and say, I hate myself, I'm not enough. But if you looked at my experiences and what happened, two marriages that didn't work out, the use of weed and alcohol, kids with behavioral problems. I made 9 business mistakes that cost me $9 million. All of those were tied up in my subconscious programming that happened between the ages of 0 and 10.
It's a great answer. Um, so I mean, there's a lot there to come back to you on, but in terms of like, should we say baby steps for someone who feels like they do have those issues going on? What should they do? First step.
So someone that wrote a book or some famous person once said, if you're in prison, to escape prison, you got to know you're in prison. I didn't know I was in prison. I thought that I could just explain all these things away. Whose kids don't have anxiety? Who doesn't smoke a little weed here and there? Who doesn't drink? Who doesn't lose money? I just explained it away. So you have to be aware if you want to make a change. So I literally created the self-love quiz for the old Brad 5 years ago. Because if we were on this podcast 5 years ago, Thomas, and you were asking me, do you have high self-esteem? Yeah. Do you have confidence? Yeah. Do you care what other people think? No, I really don't. Those were all lies I did, and I wore a mask. So I created this self-love quiz that anyone can take to figure out their level of self-love. And if it's lack of self-love or mild self-love, that will be a clear indication that you have some of these hidden beliefs that are controlling you. Because guess what? There's not a human being that was ever born with lack of self-love or depression or anxiety or obesity or OCD. Whatever it is, it was all learned behavior. So start with that. And then once you know your level of self-love, you can do some of this stuff on your own. Our website has on the resources section has all these amazing tools. But the simple answer is every negative behavior that you have in your life is your brain's perceived solution. That negative behavior is a solution to something it thinks is worse over here. That thing that it thinks is worse over here that's driving the negative behavior is always an untruth that was formed during that childhood stress and trauma. So when we can show the brain that this is untrue, you can literally rewrite the neural pathway. It's like going into an Excel spreadsheet and going to cell B6 and deleting 6 and putting in 8. You rewrite the neural pathway with the new truth, the real truth, and then guess what happens to the negative behavior? It vanishes and goes away forever because it's got nothing fueling it. So if someone's like, I don't want to work with Brad, I don't have any money, I don't like therapists, I'm going to do this on my own, get into a deeply meditative state, get in a deeply relaxed state, and start to think about the times in your life as a child where you had some really bad experiences. And then think about the meanings. What did you place on those? And then think about what could those meanings be doing to you today, to your relationships, to your financial abundance, to your health, whatever it is.
I love the answer, and I think it's quite a profound, what would you say, a profound point to say that even if it is a negative behavior, it's the mind's way of sort of attempting to protect yourself or a reaction to a belief, for example. So I can totally see the logic in what you're saying. I would imagine there's a question more than anything, which is it a long process to, let's say, rewrite a belief system in that way? Because I mean, some sort of psychotherapy, that sort of stuff, they take a long time to do it, right?
The timing question, does it take a lot of time? I took 3 decades. I was in therapy for 3 decades, on and off. In my two marriages, I was in 50 different marriage counseling sessions. That one 3 hour session, laying on that bedroom bed in an Airbnb in Park City, Utah, 3 hours, Thomas, was like 100-fold all of the hundreds of hours I spent in therapy. And you may be like, how could that be? Unfortunately, traditional therapy and marriage counseling wants to focus on the conscious mind that only controls 5% of your behavior. The subconscious mind controls 95% of your behavior. So, oh, I have anxiety and I go to a therapist. They wanted, like, let's do breathing techniques. If you're an alcoholic, let's get the liquor out of the house. Let's drive home differently so you don't go by the liquor store. That stuff doesn't work. It might be provide you temporary relief, but you've got to go figure out what's driving the behavior and where did it all start. You had said that you articulated that really well. You understood exactly what I said, that your mind is actually creating a solution. When you show up to the therapist with anxiety or depression, that is the solution. That's the solution to something that is way worse. So the DSM, which has like 100 different disorders and depression and all this, when I hear the word disorder, a doctor wants to tell you your brain has a disorder. Your brain doesn't have a disorder. Your brain is doing exactly what it should be doing based on it trying to protect itself, because your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between when you're 8 years old and 80. Why? Because it's supposed to keep you alive. So if you go by a bush at 8 years old, and the bush is shaking and you're like, oh, there's nothing there, and a lion goes out and bites your arm, when you're 80 years old, you don't want to forget that. So it doesn't know the difference in time. So all you are is a 56-year-old who has social anxiety and doesn't want to leave your house. It's because you're not a 56-year-old. That's not what's driving your behavior. It's your 6-year-old scared, unsafe self. So it only takes 3, 4, 5. The irony is when we work with clients now, Yvonne and I, we see these profound shifts in 3 to 5 hours. It doesn't take 3 to 5 years or 3 decades like my case.
Well, that's reassuring that it doesn't take that long. The one thing I wanted to ask you about, and it ties into your answer, is you mentioned about the fact that you helped your son with anxiety. And I was interested in that point because I find that even if you have, let's say, the information or the enthusiasm to help someone, often it's the case that, they're not receptive to the help, even though everything that you say may help them. So, did you find that? And what was the process for helping your son?
So I was trying to help my son by getting him outside help. Um, so he has worked with other people. He has made progress, but he's still on his journey. My daughter, who had a lot of anxiety as well, I've had her work with people. She has done a complete about face. She is like thriving in school. She's actually supposed to be a senior in high school, but she's at the community college. She's doing dual enrollment, so she's getting college credits and high school credits. She's working two jobs. She's a babysitter and a server. She loves it. She's thriving. And we have the best relationship that we've ever had. Was she ready before my son, who's actually older? Yes, she was ready. She wanted to make a change. So you're absolutely right, Thomas. I can't help anyone. The greatest life coach, happiness coach, therapist in the world. If you've got an individual who's like, I don't want to change, I want to hang on to this, it's really hard to affect change.
Okay. And anything specific to anxiety? Because I think that there are many people in your place, and potentially I may be also. So, if you're a parent worried about their child who has anxiety, I think probably due to a device, or a social media or something like that. What would you say to them?
So I believe the greatest gift that any parent can give a child is to break the multi generational curse that we're in. My parents affected me, but they were doing the best they could based on their parents and their parents and their parents. So, how do you break this multi generational curse? You teach your child how to love themselves unconditionally. I see so many clients that come to me and say, "Can you help my child?" And I look at the parent, and it is usually, not always, because social media and devices certainly don't help, but most anxiety in kids are caused by the parents. Now, notice that I'm not saying it's your fault, because I don't believe because my kid's anxiety that was my fault. I was doing the best I could. So your question is, what is advice can you give parents? It's to go take the self-love quiz and see where you stand, because the best thing that you can do is to heal yourself. Why is my daughter in the position she is? She would not be here if old Brad was still sticking around, because I didn't have a safe environment for her, even though I was physically safe and I didn't abuse her or spank or anything like that. My lack of self worth was pushing both of them. Push, push, push. It's never enough. You've got to do more, more, more. When I fixed myself, now she has completely begun to thrive. So that would be my advice to any parent who has kids that are struggling, whether they're misbehaving in school, whether they have anxiety, substance abuse issues, depression. You've got to look at the parent first and make sure that the parent doesn't have any of those issues and that they're solid.
Thank you for the answer. The other thing that you mentioned, which I wanted to ask you about, was you have some jaw-dropping, what should we say, real estate success. I don't think I have ever seen anyone with those kind of numbers. Um, well, I mean, I'm sure there's some celebrities maybe that have those kind of numbers, but I haven't spoken to anyone with that kind of number. And you also mentioned the fact that you did it from a no money down course. And my perception of that industry is that the majority of people don't come out of that environment and have massive success. Now, I may be wrong about that, but that's my perception. What do you attribute that success to?
Yeah, survival. So my core wound was I don't feel enough. And money was a major, at 10 years old when my parents got divorced, my dad was the breadwinner and he stopped paying. So there was a point in time where my mom says, we might lose this house and move into public housing. I had gone to public housing because she was a nurse, because she had patients there. And I heard there were shootings there. So my 10-year-old brain formed the story that if you don't have money, you lose your house, you move into public housing, and you likely get shot. Remember, I said the 10-year-old boy never leaves you until you do the work. So, as a 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old, I was still operating that if I don't have a ton of money, I'm going to lose my house. It's probably why I got into real estate. I'm going to lose my house, end up in public housing, and be shot. So, it was like I was fighting for my survival. I didn't, again, the conscious mind, I didn't wake up on a Monday morning and be like, I better get to work because I'm going to die. No, but my childlike mind, who was driving on all of my behavior, said, you've got to do it. So it was a curse and a blessing. It drove me to make a bunch of money, but then no amount of money was ever going to be enough. So I had to keep, when you don't feel enough, it doesn't matter if you have $10 or 10 million or 10 billion in your bank account, you still feel not enough. So the five business mistakes that I made between 2005 and 2017 that cost me $9 million, those were all me chasing this ego, that this I'm not enough and I've got to do more. So it was the short answer is why did I have success? It was I had to survive. That's what my childlike brain was telling me.
Well, that's interesting because most people aspire to, I don't know if they would aspire to that kind of success because it's a lot, but to some degree they would like to have some of that success, but it doesn't, from your answer, come from a positive place. So, what do you think about that? Not a contradiction, but almost a dichotomy in the sense that you've gotten something good from something which is quite negative.
Yeah, I love it. Another great question. So many entrepreneurs like myself get into business thinking when I can make 5 or 10 million dollars, I'm going to get to this place, this feeling, this happiness, this worthiness, this sense of pride. You will never get a sense of pride and worthiness and happiness from an amount of money. The irony is that if you can get that feeling today, no matter if you have $10 or 10 million in your bank account, and then when you do, the chances of you making 5 or 10 million dollars goes through the roof because money doesn't bring you happiness. Happiness actually brings you money. They've done study after study after study on this. So here's what I say to people now when I'm helping clients. A lot of clients have the same fuel and the same financial success that I had, but they're in this miserable place. They're unhealthy, they're overweight, they drink too much, they smoke too much weed, they have bad relationships. I go, why don't we do this? Why don't we hold on to the good things about now you know how to make money, but let's now bring peace and inner happiness to you. And now you get to have your cake and eat it too. That's what's happened with me. So yes, it was a bad thing because it was it ever a bad thing? Yeah, I guess it was a bad thing because I focused so much on it. But now I have the ability to make money because I was forced to survive, but now I have the inner peace. So now I get to enjoy both things.
It's a great place to be because you kind of got the best of both worlds. If you could speak to someone who was like, I'm all about business success and I'm almost running my health into the ground from this, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I'd say it wasn't your fault. You're probably in a similar survival thing to where I am. And you've got to ask yourself, what good is $10 million or $100 million in your bank when you can't do anything with it because you have cancer or you're laid up in a hospital bed or you're so obese that your knees start hurting. You can't play pickleball, you can't go, golfing or walking. Um, I mean, what really is more important than your health? And again, what I would tell them is you've got to do some soul searching because if you've got the money but you continue working despite your health, that's self-destructive behavior. That's a huge red flag for lack of self-love. One of the former podcast guests, Mark Mincola, who has an awesome documentary and book called The Way of Miracles, he says the opposite of self love is self contempt. Self contempt breeds dis ease, so your body's out of ease, and dis ease breeds disease. So if you've got inner conflict, you either figure it out yourself, or guess what? The universe figures it out through death, autoimmune, cancer, heart disease, whatever it is, because it's going to get you sooner or later.
It's a great answer. You've mentioned happiness a couple of times in your answer. So the question is, what is happiness for you?
Happiness for me is it's a combination of waking up with a sense of purpose. So every day I get to help people get out of this struggle and the suffering that they're in. It's also a combination of being in a place in your life where people and situations can't negatively impact you. And if they do, they steal your joy for seconds or minutes, like it happens to me now, rather than it used to be for days. When I was in a fight with my ex-wives, it would literally have this bad feeling would last for 3 or 4 days. I couldn't shake it. I had this like weight on my chest. I was like cold and distant from them. I shut them off. And now it lasts for minutes and sometimes seconds because I created this joy regenerator that you can get on our website that literally helps you process the bad feelings that you're feeling, Thomas, the negative feelings. If you have an argument with your wife or your significant other, it's never about the actual situation. It's that childlike subconscious brain bringing something from the past into the actual situation. So when you can realize that, you just process it differently and you're like, wait, this emotion, an emotion's always created by a thought. And in my case, anytime I have a negative emotion, it's created by the thought that I'm not enough. So I stop and I ask myself, am I enough? Is that true that I'm not enough? And I say, no, it's not true. I am enough. So why am I going to sit in this frustrated, sad, depressed state based on a thought that it isn't even true? And I'm like, I'm not. And then I just snap right back to my joy.
That's a good place to snap to. Um, I would imagine you've got a lot of enthusiasm to share the message because I don't know if you feel the same way, but I don't think a lot of people are where you are. You know, they're not content. There's a lot of what would you say, self-doubt, self contempt was a word that you used.
Yeah.
What do you think about bringing the message to more people?
So my goal, I have a podcast called How to Be Happy for Entrepreneurs, and I end it each time by saying I'm on a mission to help a million people crush these limiting beliefs so that they can have a life of abundance that they've always deserved and strive for. I We're doing individual coaching right now. We have a group component, but my long-term vision and goal is that we can have an app that employs AI and hypnosis that can help the girl in India who is suicidal and has $4 or $3 to her name and can get on this app and process things and be like, oh, this is why I feel so bad. Oh my gosh, I feel so much better. That's my hope and my desire. I'm 51 years old. I'm a health and longevity nut. I'm manifesting that I'm going to live to be 110. So I've got some time, but I'm trying really hard to continue to help people and hone my skills and my craft so I can one day bring this to the masses.
Okay. And for those also interested in longevity, what do you recommend?
Wow. I mean, diet and exercise is just Dave. I just started recently while watching some Dave Asprey stuff. He's the biohacking guy that's just, man, he's a smart guy. And he comes from it from a data standpoint because he started the first like tracking of, I don't know if it was Fitbit or Aura or whatever. But anyway, uh, I said health and exercise. You can eat right and you can exercise. But if you have lack of self-love and you have a bunch of stress, so let me restate that. You, number one, have to find peace with yourself because that will breed disease, like I said earlier. So get right with yourself and then eat well and exercise. It's that simple. Get out in nature, get moving, and be at peace with yourself.
So have you got like a morning routine or a daily routine that you follow?
I mean, it's almost the same thing every day. I get up, I try to do meditation. I'm not perfect at that. I take the dog for a 10-minute walk, and then I get in the car and I go to the gym. And this morning it was 6:30 a.m. hot yoga till 7:30, and then I drilled for about an hour and a half in pickleball. Then I played for half an hour, and then I went and lifted weights. I didn't do the sauna this morning, but I usually will do the sauna. And that's it. I'm usually in the gym from 6:30 to sometimes 10:30, 11 every day. Yeah, that's my routine. And drink a ton of water. I've got a 64-ounce bottle in my hand. Sometimes before I leave the gym, I'm drinking two and a half of these.
Cool. Well, some of what the answers that you've provided today, some of them remind me a little bit of meditation in the sense that, attachments to things and self-acceptance, that sort of thing. Does any inspiration come from that, or is it all based on your mindset? Is that a good
You're you're
explanation?
you're asking me, does any inspiration come from meditation?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So in the last, I never meditated until I started this journey. And there's hardly ever a night that I don't go to sleep listening to Joe Dispenza, like a 24-minute meditation. So yes, the two things I forgot to leave off on like on that I left off on longevity is alcohol and weed. I smoked a lot of weed in my life and I drank a lot. Those two substances, and you can go listen to Andrew Huberman. He's a Stanford he does two things. He's an ophthalmologist and a neuroscientist, but he's got a 2 hour podcast on alcohol and a 2 hour podcast on THC. They've been seen like 10 million times. They'll tell you the effects. Those things in any amount are really, really, really bad. So if you're doing those, and you can stop doing them because they're not serving you.
Okay, that's interesting because I think pretty much, I think it's objectively true to say that most people know that alcohol is bad for them, and maybe not to the degree that they should. Meaning, small quantities can still be bad for you. But kind of feel like with Rogan, he's attempted to bring back marijuana into the I don't know, into the mainstream, making it more appealing, if you will. What do you think about that?
Well, look, I used to be a big fan. I was the guy going around saying like it's from the earth. It's so much better than alcohol. It's really not bad. And after I listened to the Huberman, it changed my mind on everything. There's a doctor in the United States, Dr. Amen. He's got a ton of clinics around the country, and he does brain scans, and he has tens of thousands of them. And I think a couple years ago he looked at like 65,000 of them, and he made this list of things that age the brain the worst. Number one on the list was psychosis, and specifically schizophrenia. Number two on the list was marijuana. Way down the list was actually alcohol. He believes that somehow marijuana cuts off the flow of oxygen to your brain and ages your brain. So, this Joe Rogan, I'm a fan, but science will tell you, and Huberman bases everything on science, that THC is terribly destructive for your brain and body. Look, does it have its uses for a cancer patient who can't eat and has nausea? Absolutely. Would I say don't give it to them? No, I wouldn't. I think it does have its place.
Okay, thank you for that. It's a compelling argument. Only do it if you want a really old brain. It resonates with me. So, for I know you've mentioned it a couple of times, but for people who want to get in touch or hire you, where do they go?
Unlocklimitlessyou.com/Brad has all of my contact information, including my cell phone number. So if you're listening to this and you're in a really bad place and you're like, I just wish I had someone to talk to, pick up the phone and call me. No strings attached. I don't want you to be suffering. You don't deserve to be suffering. You deserve to live an abundant life full of deeply connected relationships. And despite what people may have told you at some point in your life, you are enough. You were put here for a massive mission. The fact of the egg and the sperm coming together when you were born is a pure miracle. So you've got work to do here. The world is a better place because you're in it, and just believe the truth. You can't suffer when you live in the truth, and the truth is you are enough.
It's a great message. Is there anything that I should have asked you about today?
Man, you asked some really good questions. The parent thing is something I'd really love to highlight because it all starts, if we're going to change this world, we got to change the kids, but we can't change the kids without changing the parents. We talked about, this stuff isn't your fault. If you're struggling, if you've tried everything else, just have compassion for yourself and know that your brain is actually trying to protect you. And when you can show your brain that you don't need protection anymore and that you create your own safety, you're not this little 6-year-old boy anymore or girl, then your life can change in a profound way. No matter where you are, no matter how bad you think things are, there is hope, and change is probably you're probably a lot closer than you ever think, because I've taken now 100 clients in 5 weeks and they've had massive transformations. No reason you can't, do it too.
A great message to end on, Brad. I love the message of hope, and I think you're very inspirational. So, thank you for being a great guest today.
Thank you for having me.